Queens of the Stone Age released their second album, Rated R, in 2000. Centred around the talents of singer, guitarist and founder Josh Homme and bassist Nick Oliveri, the record made an incredible impact on rock music, sounding nothing like any metal record that had come before it, as Dave Grohl remembers.
Well, Queens of the Stone Age, we've known those guys for a really long time. Before Queens of the Stone Age, there was a band called Caius, which had Josh and Nick in the band. They were kind of like an exercise in really heavy, groove-oriented, tuned-down rock. It was killer, man. They were super heavy. And then after that, Josh went on to the Screaming Trees and played with them for a little bit, and he made this Queens of the Stone Age record. And I remember the first time I heard it, I thought, wow, that's different than Caius. And Josh is singing. Josh wasn't the singer of Caius. He was just the guitar player. And Josh's voice was so smooth and cool, this kind of classic rock voice. And that first record was so, like, robotic and tight. It was totally cool. And then when they made their second album, I remember getting the CD and putting it in and hearing Feel Good Hit of the Summer, just thinking, what the hell are they doing? I mean, there's that heavy, primal punk rock to it. But then there's this other side. There were some beautiful songs on that album. Oh, we wore that record out, man.
I'm Matt Everett, and you're listening to XFM, and this is the making of Rated R by Queens of the Stone Age. How we doing? Is that all right? Thanks, Josh. Can we just check your level?
Checking my level.
It's all good. All good to go. Okay. So the first Queens album came out in 98, small indie label, made a bit of an impact and kind of established your sound. For the second one, the lineup changed. Nick Oliveri joined, who played bass in Caius with you. What were your ambitions for the album that kind of followed for the second Queens album?
I really wanted to sort of wean our audience onto the idea that we were going to play everything. And so after the first record, it was sort of like establishing a new sound for myself. And then the second record was about sort of fanning out the music and introducing the strange.
Moving away from the heavy metal template.
Well, I just wanted to add a weird quirk. It's almost like bridging the gap between the audience and the weird. Like, come touch the weird, you know? And also, it was an interesting time because we felt really free, and it's almost like you feel under the radar completely, even to your own label, you know? They're like, we have this band? You know, sort of a vibe. It's nice. Everything was so new.
So I was going to say, the album that would become Rated R was your first on a major label, Interscope. Did that kind of make you nervous?
No, I actually wanted to be on Interscope Records because they had all these bands that I wasn't necessarily in love with their albums, but they were strange bands, and they kind of seemed to accept them. You know, like I always felt like Primus was a really strange band. They were one of the first rock bands on Interscope, and so I felt like if they were excited about Primus, then they'd be real excited about me, you know? And I'm not singing about nacho cheese or something. It was more like LSD, which, you know, they're very close. They both make you feel bad at the end, you know?
So when the record came out in June 2000, the first track on it, which was the second single, was Feel Good Hit of the Summer, which caused a massive amount of controversy when it came out, not surprisingly.
Well, I mean, I knew that I thought it was really funny, you know, because one of the most important features of the lyric is that it doesn't say yes or no, it just lists drugs. And I think especially at the time, I really was into toying with censorship. That's why the album was called Rated R, which in America is part of the movie rating systems. And I've always been fascinated by people's need to censor the words and without thinking about their intent. You know, and it doesn't matter if you mean it or not. It's just don't say it. It's easier for everyone to get their head around. And so I felt like that was really funny because it Feel Good Hit of the Summer. You take it where you're at in your life. I've had every version of interpretation of that song, and it's like walking into a room and saying like boobs without saying anything else. People just go like, you're going, you know, if you have the guts to just stand there in silence after any word, you know, you get to see what happens.
It's interesting because in the UK, where you toured a lot after the album came out, people didn't react with kind of horror. They kind of got the irony and went, okay, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, after this record, I think most of the folks in the UK thought we were an English band because we spent so much time here, and the fact that someone understood me made me want to come here a lot, you know, because when other people didn't get it and England did, I was like, yeah, right? I mean, come on, right? You know, it felt like I had a friend, you know.
You got Rob Halford, the singer with Judas Priest, singing on the track. How did that come about?
He was literally just standing in the studio next door, about ready to record, and it just added to the irony. You know, I think lots of times people confuse opposites with irony, but it seemed like true irony for us to have Halford, and he said, we write the lyrics down, and he hadn't heard the song. He'd agreed to do it without even knowing what it was, and on a piece of paper I just wrote, you know, nicotine, Valium, Vicodin, marijuana, ecstasy, alcohol, and cocaine really big in capitals. And I just pushed this paper to him, and he looked at it and goes, rock and roll cocktail, I think I invented that. And so we got on great. He's such a lovely guy, you know.
The first single and the second track on the album, Lost Art of Keeping a Secret, came out in the UK in August 2000 and entered the top 40 at 31. Was it a surprise to have like a genuine hit? Because Kyuss were hugely respected but never ever sold any records, really. They never really made an impact on the UK. Chart success never seemed a priority.
Well, I think it's the first introduction of pop sensibility to our fans at that point, because it's the first time venturing into places where before I think I would have been afraid to go, because I'd just come out of Kyuss not too long ago and had subscribed to what I call the they theory. What will they say? What will they do? What will they think? So this was like, I like hooks and I like dark pop music, and I like it when it sounds like this. And so it was kind of my first shot at taking that sort of pop song structure that I had always been trying to destroy and actually using it as a way to make it a little more perverted, you know.
It's a quite inane thing to ask, and I hate doing it, but what's it about, you know? Or can you tell us, how do you approach writing it? That's maybe a better question to ask. How did you approach writing a song like that?
Well, I think I'd been dealing with the fact that it's not very difficult for me to keep a secret. It involves less work. It's about not saying anything. And I kind of felt like in the culture and around me that people just couldn't hold it in. You know, it's just like, I know something and I have to blurt it out now. And especially when it came to trysts and flings and this and that, you know, I sort of just, it felt very poignant for the moment, you know. Whatever you do, don't tell anyone, you know.
So when the album came out in June 2000, it really did make an impact. Did you expect people to clutch it so readily to their bosom?
No, I never expect any bosom clutching, really. You know, I was so used to making records that just not tons of people heard, and I think I was just fine with that, you know. And in a way, there's a certain amount of insulation there where you're protected by, like, not that many people are going to hear this, and that's okay. Maybe they should, but they just don't, you know. I think it's a little bit tougher when lots of people are supposed to hear it, and then if they don't, you know, that's a different sort of pressure. So,
the track "Leg of Lamb," I think it has more in common with like art rock bands. It's more kind of like a Wire or a Devo thing. It's a really big left turn for the Queens, even, you know, sort of compared to the other tracks on the album.
Yeah, and it's crucial to, like, letting people touch the weird and the dark, you know, because Leg of Lamb I always thought of as like, wow, this is a proper pop song with weird slathered all over it like jelly, you know, and it was such a declaration of independence lyrically too. It was don't want to end up behind the glass window, you know, just like another sellable meat product, you know.
You're a head case with a smile, can't stop to make up your mind. Education is so lame.
And it was said in such a strange way that now Leg of Lamb is almost like it's a template for on records after that. It was like these songs are cousins of Leg of Lamb. They stay at Leg of Lamb's house, and that's kind of how we talk about stuff. So Leg of Lamb is a very special song.
The walls that are caving in, it ain't a bad thing.
Nick only appeared on the first Queen's album as like a little phone message at the end of it.
Hey John, this is Nick Oliveri. Saw what you did last night.
But on this one, as well as playing bass, he sings on a couple of tracks. But you were both...
Josh kind of had I think what it was he didn't want to be the only singer, He didn't want to sing, I don't think, at first, I think he kind of was a little standoffish about his voice, maybe, or something, I don't know. He asked me to sing some songs, I was like, yeah, I'll do it, I was into it.
But you were both seen, the pair of you were very much seen as being the band. It seemed maybe oversimplistically that Nick was kind of the aggressive yin to your more serene yang. Was that actually the case, or was that just kind of people's interpretations of your roles and your personalities?
It was actually something that he and I talked about early on. On the first record, I just sang everything myself, and I think in a lot of ways I really didn't want the spotlight. I was the guy that was writing songs about secrets, and I wanted to sort of duck in the shadows. And Nick was sort of more comfortable anywhere except the shadows. And so we made a deal that we called Jekyll and Hyde, which is no matter what I did, he took the blame, and no matter what he did, he took the blame. The English...
I don't do anything different than anybody else, I don't think. I think I just got caught a couple times. I just got seen doing things, I guess. I don't know. But I think maybe it got a little blown out of what it is, It kind of got a little crazy. I think it takes a little bit of sanity to to say, like, yeah, what I did was pretty crazy. Sorry about that.
The English press is so quick to not care. It's like, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, lad,
Oh, I've been here so many times. I never seen you before, but now that I have,
And so it made it simple, and I think what it did is we'd always been great friends, and I think to others it painted a yin-yang picture that was different than the truth, but was funny to us. I think the underlying thing is we always need to be able to laugh about, not take yourself too seriously.
I wanna fly right with you. This is the best that you can do.
XFM. The XFM 10th birthday documentaries. 2000's Queens of the Stone Age. Rated R. XFM.
The next track, Better Living Through Chemistry, that's really going to help. A title like that's really going to help dispel this myth that you're like a bunch of narcotic maniacs.
This was before every time we were supposed to do a photo shoot, it wasn't always in front of a drugstore sign or something retarded like that, And this is actually an anti-drug song. It's like an anti sort of, the new religion of psychology and drugging everybody. Sort of being heroic by fighting that or taking them for incorrect reasons.
But for an anti-drug song, it did reinforce this, maybe fictional, maybe not, reputation as being like a really sort of drug-obsessed act.
What happened is people take the first thing they can grasp a hold to, even if it's incorrect. And I've never minded that so much because I'm not a huge fan of telling people what they should and shouldn't do, But for me, this was like more of a declaration of, look at everybody. Hi, zombies.
So is it true it was adopted by the San Diego Sheriff's Department on one of their educational films about the dangers of sort of substance abuse?
It was actually Feel-Good Hit of the Summer that the Sheriff's Department, which actually ended up saving both Nick and I in court situations later on, because it was almost like good credits, like, look what we did with the police, so you can't possibly be against us now, It saved many hours of community service for both Nick and I later on in life,
The Desert Sessions is a series of albums you've been recording, like, with an ever-changing lineup of people since about 1997. And Monsters in the Parasol, the track, originally appeared on Desert Sessions number 3. How does that project kind of relate to Queens?
Well, I would say that the easiest way to sort of grasp both the Queens and Desert Sessions is every style of music played by friends that are new and old, you know, people that have just met each other, and Queens is playing every style of music the Queens way. And so some stuff should be heard by more people. Some stuff I knew was going to be Queens stuff, but take the Desert Sessions anyways to see how it gets twisted. And there's all manner of versions of everything. I think some songs just deserve to be heard more, you know. And Monsters in the Parasol was one of those songs that just deserved to be heard more. It was such a weird disco song. It was about, you know, my first LSD trip when my friend's dad came home right as everything was kicking in, you know. And it seemed like disco didn't really speak to people like that. You know, there was no modern disco that was like, oh!
Because there's some really strange imagery on that track.
If it's hard to explain something, or if the telling of it literally is too boring, then painting the right picture was right. And, you know, saying Paul's dad is warped and bubbling. And I was never actually able to go back to Paul's house, and I really wanted to sleep with his sister, and she basically turned into a werewolf alien, and I was like, and you just deal with it, you know? So I think it's a touching story about young love at its root, and that's what's nice.
I don't even know what I'm doing here.
It was also massively at odds with the new metal scene at the time. I think that's one of the reasons that the UK kind of got the record, because, you know, Limp Bizkit and everything, everyone kind of liked that in the UK, but we didn't really respect new metal, I think, as a genre in the way that a lot of people in the States did.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like wearing giant shorts. It's just after a while you realize it's lame. You know, I mean,
I think it's a different approach to music for sure, and it's definitely one that I've never taken as far as doing new metal. But yeah, I think it was a breath of fresh air maybe to have just some straight rock and roll.
I've taken it where when the music scene is particularly bad, I always feel particularly comfortable, because it's sort of like the people around you, their records push yours into glaring relief. I mean, if the alternative was people trying to sound like us, I would probably be a little more miffed about it, you know? I never felt like, what are we going to do because of the bands around us, you know? It always felt like they were helping us with each note, you know?
Did you ever have any run-ins with the new metal scene when you were touring with them at the same time?
Yeah, here and there. Queens has always had sort of a vibe that's, you know, it's not overly macho like that stuff is. But for some reason, you know, we've always also had a reputation that's preceded us a little bit. We don't have anyone under 6 foot tall, and, you know, our bluntness has always been one of our funniest aspects to our sense of humor, is the willingness to say something that other people won't, you know. So the run-ins were short and to the point. Quick and to the pointless.
Chris Goss co-produced the record.
Chris had produced all the Caius records, and he and I just struck up a friendship that still goes to this day, and it's just a working relationship.
We met at one of the early Caius shows. He was, I think, like 17 years old at the time. I was just curious as to what they listened to that made them sound like they did. At the time, in the early 90s, metal at the time was being recorded very thinly and staccato and this uptight anal. To me, they sounded like grasshoppers playing cymbals. It sounded like a teenage boy that couldn't get laid writing songs. And but Caius was swinging and low, sexy and dirty and slithering. You know, I stepped in because I didn't want some metal producer to come in and make them sound thin, and I thought they really needed to sound like they did.
Working relationship where it's with Caius, Chris almost put like a cake cover over it where we were protected from the outside world and we could experiment. And by the time we did Rated R, it was really about having your friend come over and sharing, and look how bizarre this record's about.
We always push as far as we'll go. I think it's just out of sheer boredom. I mean, You know, I mean, who would want to go out to dinner and get, like, you know, potatoes for an appetizer and potatoes for an entree and potatoes, you know, potato salad and then a potato dessert? You know, I mean, like, every song, it has to change up, in my mind anyway, to keep interest and, you know, some kind of aesthetics at play during every song.
Recorded it in Van Nuys, California, which is where they make Budweiser and porn. Yeah, so it's an exciting place, and it was an exciting time.
It's really strange to have a number of different singers on one record. It's still quite weird because not that many bands do it. Like in The Fade, which has got Mark Lanigan on vocals. How did he get involved?
Well, I was in the Screaming Trees just to sort of as a hired gun to play.
I first met him when he came to play guitar in the Screaming Trees, my old band. You know, he was playing the songs of my old band, so I'm sure it was fairly uninteresting for him, but we became friends real quick.
All the Trees couldn't stand each other, but I got along with all of them, and I got along particularly with Mark. I always say when Mark sings about toothpaste, I want to brush, you know? His voice is so individual, and I really love the Cupid role of life, introducing someone to someone else. And I felt like, God, I want to reintroduce the world to Mark, and I knew that we could get him to play music and songs that he never would have played before.
I never do you any good.
It sounds very triumphant in the chorus, you know, it's very uplifting, the guitar riff and the vocal. Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs on that record, and it was sort of the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah, well, he had actually asked me to sing on the first Queens record, but I wasn't able to. And then when they were making Rated R, we were in the same place at the same time, so he asked me to come down. You know, I love Josh to death. I would have worked on anything he handed me, so...
He consumes so many books and records and he's very choosy. He knows what his style is, even when it's songs he's never done before or styles he's never done before. It was music I had, but lyrically and working on the melody and stuff like that, it was also a way of saying this is how it is in this band, you know. We do the best ideas available to us no matter how they come to pass.
You know, I thought it was catchy, it was cool. I said it's kind of a blur, but I do remember having a good time and being excited by the songs that they were playing for me. I thought it was going to be a great record, and it was, you know, very cool.
XFM. The XFM 10th birthday documentaries. 2000's Queens of the Stone Age. Rated R. XFM.
The whole ethos of Queens of the Stone Age seems to be kind of in flux. The lineup changes, the music changes. Was that always the idea, or is that something that's kind of evolved as it's gone on?
Caius was like a religion, and it ended up having rules that constricted what we were able to do. And before that sort of destroyed us, I wanted to get out of there and do the exact opposite, which is no rules. That seemed like the best habit was absolutely no habit, but to search for something great, no matter where it was or how it came to be, you know?
It could be seen as being pretty mercenary, getting through like hundreds of band members.
We always said, you know, we switch people, you know, to capture this new essence, but really it was protective for us, because if somebody was too precious or was too fragile or was too stylistically growing in a different direction, it enabled us to sort of pull the tooth instead of break the jaw, you know. It kind of worked in a lot of ways to be able to keep growing together or, you know, do a little weeding.
It's harder to shoot a moving target.
Hell yeah. Especially when you're covered in oil.
On the bathroom floor, gotta get out and get right.
Lightning Song is a really, really beautiful piece of music, but not necessarily what you'd expect to hear. It's totally at odds with the rest of the album, even an album as eclectic as Rated R.
Well, it's stretching our wings out, and it's short, My friend Dave Ketching wrote the basic part of that song, and it was so beautiful and it was so necessary. It seemed undeniably like sweet, that song. We needed to fan the music out, and it needed to go in every direction. By then, I understood heavy as not distortion anymore, but content heavy, emotionally heavy instead. And that distortion heavy was, to repeatedly do it was juvenile and boring, it seemed like. It also seemed doable by anybody. But this song seemed extremely heavy because it was light and willing to be more vulnerable. And it was short enough that you could take it in a dose, and it was the beginning of sort of dosing the audience until they could accept anything that sounded good, no matter what it was like.
So how do you see your role within this kind of ever-changing band and the sort of sessions? Are you like an orchestrator, a director?
Well, I've started reading books, oddly enough, about like Oppenheimer and the building of the atom bomb, and Oppenheimer wasn't the best scientist, and he wasn't a politician, but he spoke both languages, and so it was the right choice to sort of bridge these people together. And I really felt like we had a bunch of people around that had great skill at what the others did not, and what we really needed is just somebody to sort of get it all started, and point a direction that isn't important, but at least we're going somewhere. If you're going to lead people, you need somewhere to go,
It's really fascinating because, there aren't many groups who evolve like that. It's quite unique.
The way I understood it is I wanted to be in the antithesis of all other bands, because I noticed that sort of closed off, can't do this, got to pay allegiance to people instead of music, And so you get bogged down by people even when they blow it, because it's like, well, we've known them for 5 years, when really I'm like, f*** that person, they blew it, man. You should do something about it, because music is above all things. It's how you express the intangibles in life, and so it shouldn't be left to like, this person has a drug problem or they don't know what a D minor is. What you should do is enjoy playing with people and grow with them, or accept that it's okay to grow apart and not be so precious about what that is.
You seem like a pretty moral guy. Does guilt never come into it?
In the past, I've worried, like, that sounds cold, but I know it's not, because I've spent so much time trying to say, like, man, you really got to grow with us, and here, let's help. But if 2 years later someone's like, then I think you owe it to everyone else that wants to keep going, to do something about it. And so, sadly, one of my skills has always been how to wield the knife, But that's the way it is.
We talked about having to wield the knife with band members and kind of cutting people free from the group. Does it surprise you that Nick isn't a member of the band anymore?
To be honest, no, because I knew Nick as a series of explosions of increasing size, I understood it as that the better we did, the bigger the explosions would get.
I can admit that I've been a little crazy before, I was truly crazy, I wouldn't have seen that, see?
Which meant someday it would come to a critical mass at some point. I was just hoping that it would be something that we could both understand, and that wouldn't have to be something that we would consider other people in, that it would be he and I, But it didn't work out that way.
Nobody hangs out forever. For about 5 or 6 years, we did nothing but jam together. It was great, but if there was anything that we were doing outside of Queens, we were doing that together too, or hanging out, like Josh was doing the desert sessions. But we did too much, I think, together in that time frame,
It was bound to happen, I think people, especially in the UK, like press-wise and things like that, people build a pedestal, and there's only 2 reasons to build one, to get you up there and then kick it at the bottom, I think from day one, I always was trying to listen for the people sawing at the bottom of it all, So I wouldn't change anything. It is what it is.
That's probably all it was, You get burned out,
Is that a door that's closed?
Yeah.
I had to ask that, don't you?
Yeah. I have to say just yeah.
Hopefully, we'll run into each other sometime soon and have a beer or something. I don't know. I don't know about jamming anymore, you know. I'd love to. It'd be great. But I ain't gonna sit and worry about it, you know.
The album finishes with I Think I Lost My Headache, which is a pretty full-on track.
That's probably one of my favorite Queen songs ever because it's so bizarre. It's kind of like a pop song wrapped in the two most abusive bookends, beginning and ending.
There's this mental metal freeform jazz saxophone bit at the end that goes on for about 3 minutes. Where did that come from?
These horn players, I made them blow this part. It's about 76, 78 repeats of this part, and then make them do it again, but in a round opposite each other, and then, you know, do it with different accent marks. They ended up blowing it like about 500 times each, and until they were blue in the face. But it was necessary because it seemed like something no one else would do. And it seemed like something we had never done. It was kind of scary because it was like people are going to be like, what the hell is your problem? At that time, a lot of my friends and I would fall asleep to records, you know, when you go to bed, you know. And I always wanted the end of the record to jar you loose, you know, repeatedly tap you on the shoulder until you're like, ah, you know, because it is abusively long.
Lots of musicians I've spoken to have kind of got a difficult relationship with their breakthrough album or their biggest album or whatever. You know, it's like it can be seen as a millstone on their necks. They don't relate to it very well, and it's like something they can't escape. Whereas you seem really good friends with Rated R.
I love all our records. I mean, I learned to make music that you make your favorite music that no one else made, so you had to. And I listen to all our records, and lots of people feel awkward or bad about it, and I almost feel awkward or bad about the fact that that's what happens to them, you know, because not listening to it would feel like, I don't call my folks anymore. They're a bunch of dicks. You know, it just seems weird.
What is it about the record that people love so much? There's a lot of good records out there. Not all of them get recognised. Some don't. I mean, you know, I hate to use the phrase connected.
Oh, I think it's a great phrase, actually.
Why did it connect with people? Why did Rated R connect with people so well?
I really don't know. I think so much of that stuff has to do with timing and luck. We've always been on a path. I've always been on a path, and if we ever were going to do well, we were going to bend the mainstream towards us, or they were just going to intersect somewhere for a time. And I never really expected it to last as long as it has, and so I really have no idea.
It was fresh. And it was smart because of the directional turns, stylistic turns. It's not just a boring, bland heart monitor, you know, with a flat line on it. You know, it's not flat. It moves. And it's interesting. It was a lot of fun making that record. Nick and Josh together doing their first, you know, major label debut since Caius. They had a lot to say and a lot to play at that moment in time, so it was a good moment in time.
We just tried a bunch of different things, you know. If somebody had an idea and it sounded like it would be cool, we'd go and we tried it, you know. If it didn't work, it didn't work, you know. Nobody got like, come on, man, it's my part. But yeah, we all had some cool ideas and tried a bunch of different things, and I think we all picked the best ones, you know, the best ideas.
After Rated R, they had blown it so wide open that their options were endless, that they could do anything without it seeming contrived and weird, you know. And the cool thing about Queens of the Stone Age is that rather than it being that conventional idea of a band, it's almost like a musical commune. You can go there and you can do your thing, and it's almost like dating a hippie chick who just loves everything and everyone. Queens of the Stone Age definitely redefined the idea of being in a rock and roll band. There were lots of open doors, and I think Rated R is what set them up, you know, to be what they are today. They're absolutely one of my favorite rock bands of all time.
It's an album of paranoia and confusion, and it's full admittance of everything. I don't think we've ever held anything back.
Is that all good?
Yeah.
Okay, we finished.
Oh,
Thank
cool.
you very much for your time, man.
Awesome, man. Cheers.
Thank you.
We'll do the job.